So please helping us answering this poll, and we can know with more detail who is in the room. We're also streaming this webinar on YouTube, so welcome all the ones that are following that in YouTube. Okay, so please helping us voting. Are you voting now? I don't know. Is it working, the poll? Okay,
yes,
thank
working.
you. Thank you, and gracias, Manolo, también, querido. Gusto que estés con nosotros. Happy New Year to all of you that I haven't checked up this year. Okay, so 1 more minute and we will close this poll. And Sylvie will help us, or Juan David, to show the results of the poll. Okay, so I think we can start right now. Juan, could you share please the results of the poll? Because for me it's 0. Juan?
La vemos, Caro.
No, Sylvia, I think, is the one who needs to show the
results.
The results, yeah.
But
No.
we're already seeing them.
No.
Yes, we are seeing, but all of them are in 0, no, Roberto?
No, yo sí los tengo con
No,
números,
no.
Caro.
Okay. Okay, thank you, gracias. Juan, and you are sharing my screen. So.
Yeah, I know. So I'm going to be sharing the screen. So Alan, can you please handle the guest?
Okay. So if someone can help me with the results of the poll, I would appreciate it, because I cannot see that.
I think
I can help you, Karina.
With the results of the poll.
Yes.
Okay.
We have a lot of foundations, ecosystem builders, and investment funds. So these are 1/3, for more or less 1/3 foundations, 1/3 ecosystem builders, and 1/3 investment funds, and a few consultants and public sector people.
Okay.
And the other question, most of the people want to learn about tech innovations for social change. These are more or less 70%. And the rest wants to invest, fund, or support tech startups with social focus.
Okay.
Very interesting. Thank you.
Thank you, Johannes, and actually thank you, David, for sharing the pictures with me. So now we will launch officially our first webinar of the year. It is a pleasure to be connected with people from different parts of the world, sharing this first webinar. And it is a big privilege to start co-hosting this webinar with BMW Foundation, one of the Latimpacto's founders and better promoters of the Investing for Impact approach worldwide. I would invite the attendees to have unmute their mics, so we cannot interrupt our audio at this moment. My name is Carolina Suarez. For those that do not know me yet, I am the CEO for Latimpacto, the Latin American Network of Investing for Impact. We were created a year ago with the leadership of distinguished leaders from the social investment sectors across Latin America, and with the support from the International Venture Philanthropy Center. The purpose, and you can see in the next slide, the purpose of our network is to mobilize, Juan, the next one, please, is to mobilize providers of social investment capital to promote a more efficient deployment of financial and non-financial resources, generating a positive, sustainable, and long-term social and environmental impact. As a network, we connect to the largest community of global social investors, more than 1,000 organizations that are members of the European Venture Philanthropy Association, EVPA, and the Asian Venture Philanthropy Network, AVPN, than those engaged in Africa by the African Network. So we aim, the next one, Juan, we aim to connect the entire continuum of capital from philanthropic grants to the full market rate return impact investment, including talent and intellectual capital. We also seek to connect providers of capitals across all silos. So it's because we ask the first questions from foundations, corporates, investors, family offices, professional services, academia, the government as well. We promote the most efficient approaches to achieve impact first. So we encourage a rigorous social deployment of catalytic capital, following the principles of investing for impact or venture philanthropy, in order to generate a more significant social impact, applying the approaches from private equity and venture capital. And finally, but not least significant, we connect, as I mentioned before, with the largest community of global social investors. We are an independent network, a Latin American, 100% Latin American network, but we are part of a global movement, and we want to connect with this largest community of global social investors. And it's because we are co-hosting this webinar with BMW Foundation. So our ultimate goal of Latimpacto is creating a more positive social and environmental impact through the facilitation of connections, sharing knowledge, information, best practices, and mobilizing more capitals towards impact. Please, I also ask yourself to mute your mic. Thank you.
Aquí un 80 ya y un 10 ahí.
For us,
que te lleguen, también date tiempo de pensar, y date tiempo para ti, no todo el...
Could you? Yes, thank you. Okay, for us, the report that we will present today, the BMW report, is specifically relevant because we are living in a moment in which tech innovations are playing a key role more than ever before. Today, our political, social, economic, and environmental challenges and the efforts to achieve the SDGs need to be addressed by applying the most innovative and systematic approaches using technology. So it's because we are trying to promote this report and how we can apply the lessons learned that you can find on them. We need to act now, and the Tech of Good movement is covering different types of actors to create impact in the most relevant issues. So it is a pleasure that we'll have Juanes Weber and Eva Agir from BMW Foundations, and they will share the most relevant insights of the report. And then in this webinar, we will open a dialogue with Enrique Zapata from the CAF, the Latin American Development Bank, who will share with us the most important tech for good innovation that are happening in Latin America. Then, and to make this dialogue more interesting and dynamic, we have invited two leaders from Outmost Startups, Lucas Paez de Melo from Amparo, and Jesus Cepeda from OSC City, who will share with us how they are using the tech to create innovative changes and better solutions for the world. So I thank Juanes, Eva, Enrique, Lucas, and Jesus to be part of this extraordinary webinar and share their learnings and experiences with us. I am sure that the experiences that we will listen today will help us to better understand the relevance of the concept in practice and the opportunities of the tech for good to create a better world. So the agenda, as I mentioned before, we will start with Juanes Weber. He will help us introducing the report, and then Juanes will open the panel, introducing the speakers and asking questions that will help us to have a real discussion. We also will invite the attendees to ask questions to the chat, and at the end of the panel, we will open 20 minutes to discuss with the audience how they are seeing the challenge that we have with the tech innovation. So now, please let me introduce Juanes. The floor is yours, and thank you once again for making this webinar possible. Juanes, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Carolina. Thanks for the invitation, and we are honored and proud to co-host this first webinar of 2021. We very much hope that it will be a better year than 2020. Thanks to you and bringing this whole thing together. It's really impressive what you made here in Latin America with Latimpacto, and what energy and activity you're creating in Latin America for the VP movement. Really impressive. Thank you very much. As you already said, I will give you a short intro about our report, but first and foremost, we want you to read it, of course, to download it from our website and to read it. So I won't say too much. But before talking about the report, maybe just a few words about the BMW Foundation. We are a corporate foundation, but independent from the BMW group. The core idea of the foundation is responsible leadership. So we work a lot with people changing the world, not mainly organizations. So that's the core of this leadership idea. And we're working in like 3 different fields, which we call inspire, connect, and invest. The inspire part is really bringing people together, inspire them with ideas, getting them closer to a social engagement, and so on and so forth. The connect part is people coming out of these leadership programs are then part of our network, and it's a global network, and our Latin American part of the network is very important. And we're very proud of our Latin American network as well. And then the third part, which is, I think in this context, the most important part, which is called invest. And the overall idea of this part is really to foster this transformation of the financial and economic system towards sustainability and impact. And we do this mainly in 3 different work streams. So we have one work stream, which is around sustainable finance and impact investing. And in this work stream, we, on the one hand side, invest parts of our endowment impact oriented, but at the same time have a program where we are trying to support and foster organizations like Latimpacto to work as intermediaries and catalysts for movements like impact investing or venture philanthropy. So this is a very important part of our work to strengthen this movement that's like combining financial return with social return. The second part is the second work stream is around cities, so sustainable cities, which is called RISE cities in our context. And the third one is around technologies for a better world. The core of this third work stream is our Respond Accelerator program, but Heber will tell you more about that in a minute. What was the motivation for this report? I mean, Carolina said a lot about technological innovations and their role to tackle the core challenges of our time. And we also believe that technologies play an important role. And I think this will also be part of the discussion afterwards, what kind of role technologies can play and how important they are in different sectors and topics and so on and so forth. So this was one of our motivations as well. But then we wanted to showcase real life examples of tech innovations changing the world. So real tech for good examples. And we wanted to bring in the entrepreneurs and talk about their solutions. So the core of this report is really 12 examples for tech for good entrepreneurs and their technological innovations for changing the world, written by those entrepreneurs, talking about their challenges, their solutions, and so on and so forth. And we've divided it into 3 sections. So there's one section around protection, so protecting the planet, protecting our ecosystem, and so on and so forth. There's a lot around climate. There's a lot about waste, how can we reduce and recover the waste and make new products out of waste, and so on and so forth. Then one section around empowering people, and we will hear a good example with Lucas and Amparo, how technologies can empower people out there. And the third section is around transform. So how can we transform industries, whole sectors? And I mean, one great example is Made of Air, where they produce production materials that really capture CO2 instead of producing CO2. But I think all the examples are very, very inspiring and motivating to look deeper into this sector. And as I've seen in the polls, a lot of you are interested in tech for good, and therefore it's really inspiring to see these good examples. And around these examples, we brought together a set of contributions that are kind of with these contributions we wanted to make a contribution to the broader discussion around tech for good. And we brought together a group of very diverse people, from a commissioner of the European Commission to Ronnie Cohen, who founded the Global Steering Group for Impact Investing, to a guy from the German government who is supporting social innovation and tech innovations within the German government. And with these framing contributions, we want to give a bit of an overview of what's out there. Of course, it's a little bit Europe and German centric. I mean, we're based in Munich and Berlin, and that's one of the reasons why, of course, this ecosystem in Europe is closer to us as a foundation than maybe the Latin American or the Asian ecosystem for tech innovations. Nevertheless, a lot of these insights and findings hold true for other regions of the world as well. So this is a real invitation for you to download the report, read the report, give us feedback, send us your ideas what maybe in the second edition of the report we could make better, what people maybe we should bring into this discussion that are interesting, and tell us if it was maybe helpful for you or if it was not helpful for you and what you missed within this report. So I think one of my colleagues, Katharina, she's posting the link in the chat, and you can find the report on our website. Heber will talk a little bit about our Respond Accelerator program, and a lot of these entrepreneurs and startups that are in the report have been part of the 2020 cohort of our Respond program. And as already mentioned, we'll hear a little bit about that afterwards. That's in a nutshell the report. I hope you have the link. I hope you will download it. I hope it's helpful for you, and it's an enjoyable and interesting read for you. So I think it's time to dig a little bit deeper into this topic, and we have, as Carolina mentioned, 4 excellent speakers. And the idea for the coming 40-45 minutes is to talk on the panel about this topic of tech for good and technological innovations changing the world. And we will do this in like 5 different sections. So we have a short intro of each and every speaker, where she and he will present his or herself and talk a little bit about their organization, what their connection to this topic of tech for good. After that, we will dig a little bit deeper in this question of what tech for good is. So what is real tech for good? Is there real tech for good? Is there good tech for good? So it's a kind of buzzword, but I think behind this buzzword, there are good examples, and maybe there's not a clear definition, but there are good examples where we can figure out what tech for good is. After that, we'll dig a little bit into the topic of like, what role do technologies really play in changing our world? So are they the crucial part, or are they only a tool, or what role do technologies play? And then in the last 2 sections, we will dig a little bit deeper in this question of ecosystem. I mean, Latimpacto is a very important ecosystem player in Latin America, and I've seen there are a lot of field builders and ecosystem builders in the audience. So we'll talk a little bit about the ecosystem and maybe the differences of different ecosystems, maybe in Latin America and Europe and in different countries, and about the question how we can accelerate this whole movement. So how can we accelerate tech for good? What could we provide? What organizations are missing in this ecosystem that in the end, more technological innovations with societal impact are successful and get scaled and really create impact? So enough of introduction. Let's jump right in with the first question. And I would ask all the panelists to say a few words about you and your organizations, and maybe what you connect with this topic of with this topic of tech for good, or technological innovations for good. And I would love to start with the examples, so with the entrepreneurs in the panel. So Lucas, would you kick it off and talk a little bit about what you're doing, and if you would consider yourself a tech for good entrepreneur?
Thank you, Juanes. Thank you for the introduction. Thank you, everyone, for the invitation. It's really nice to be here. I live in Germany, but I'm originally from Brazil, so I know very well the Latin American environment, and I'm very, very happy to be here also with you guys. So what we do, I'm the CEO and co-founder of Amparo and Amparo Access. What we do, we have developed a prosthetic leg for lower limb amputees that can be fitted in about 1 hour time. And all the tools necessary to build that product, they can also fit in a leg. So we pretty much enable people to fit amputees anywhere in the world, at their home, at the hospital, in rural areas, wherever it's possible. We have done that as well. So that's what Amparo does. Amparo Access is our nonprofit arm. And while Amparo is developing, manufacturing, and distributing components, Amparo Access is the go to make sure that this technology is available to everyone who needs it. And your question about tech for good, I think that's super interesting and makes me think, so good for whom, or what is good, right? This is also like a kind of a reflection that we do. And I think what we envision as tech for good is something that brings value that's beyond profit in a way. So it's not limited to profit, but it's also, it's kind of a rebalancing of the economy, or how the world is posted nowadays. So it's about bridging the gap between different inequalities, between social classes, or even people from like the community of disabled people, for example, and other that I'm so close to. So it's pretty much bridging that gap and making sure that everyone has the same opportunity, the same equal treatment. And of course, that is also involved in taking care of our planet, thinking that good is a prosperity, that we as a humanity live longer and more prosperous. I would take into the consideration that everyone, or every initiative that actually bridges that gap between the inequalities and prosper the world to become more sustainable and to actually be able to provide for everyone in an equal level, I would consider that being as a tech for good.
Thanks, Lucas. Jesus.
Hey, Juanes. Hey, everyone. Good morning from the metropolitan area of Monterrey in Mexico. So it's early morning here. I'm very, very happy to share the experience. A little bit of my background. I have a PhD in artificial intelligence, and then I dig deeper into technology, learning about blockchain and its potential for doing social impact at Singularity University. And so I came back to Latin America. I spent some years and some months and almost a year in Silicon Valley with these ideas. And then since 2018, more or less, till now, I've been co-founding and playing the role as CEO at OACT. In OACT, the main problem, the why that we have, the thing that moves us every single morning is how to alleviate the crisis of institutional agility and trust that we are suffering. And this is very linked to Enrique Zapata and the people from CAF. We consider ourselves a government technology company, so a GovTech. And essentially, just think about this. Even before pandemics, all of our cities were following this trend of getting more and more populated. And there is these statistics saying that every city is going to have a population threshold above which every government is going to go inefficient. So think about that, becoming inefficient, becoming lacking of trust, let's say it. So that's a big challenge, and we're trying to help public servants to have an agile way to create government processes in a digital format and issue all your digital permit, your licenses, or your official documents as an open verifiable credential using blockchain technologies. This combination, or because of the foundational attributes of blockchain, being fraud-proof, being transparent, being decentralized, is definitely doing some good in the public sector. So hopefully this answers this question, feeling that we are doing actually technology for good.
Perfect. Thank you, Jesus. Heba, next to you, what are your role within the Tech for Good ecosystem?
Thank you, Hannes. Thank you, Carolina. I'm so happy to be here. So I'm not Latin American, I'm Egyptian, but very excited to be here with everyone from the continent. Yeah, Johannes said a lot about the BMW Foundation. I joined the BMW Foundation in 2019, and I'm the chief executive for the Respond Accelerator program. It is the first accelerator program to promote responsible leadership and scalable, sustainable business model. What does that mean? It means that with understanding and supporting what Johannes said, the mindset of responsible leadership as a foundation, it was so important to understand how much impact tech and innovation and entrepreneurship has on our economic systems and in changing the way of lives of society, of tackling environmental challenges, or like in the core also the economic system. So it was very important to think about how to be able to support entrepreneurs, impact tech entrepreneurs who care about developing technologies and novel and innovative business models to solve global challenges, to lead and grow and scale their businesses. So when we launched Respond, which is operated by Latimpacto, we thought leadership is a key element, and it's very important to understand what a leader, an entrepreneur, a founder, and all other leaders in the different institutions we know about can grow and can be concerned and feel responsible about what they produce, what they trying to solve with their solutions. And this we support by strong mentorship and international mentorship network from all over the world, and intersectorial, so that you can think out of the box and bring together all components needed for that. Growth through coaching, because I'm a mechanical engineer myself, and I know how complicated and how challenging it is to be thinking in a very technical engineering way and understand about sales and pricing and understand about legal issues and understand markets, etc. A lot of entrepreneurs come from all of the different areas, so it's very important to understand and to bring knowledge to the team and strengthen them in their approach with all knowledge and tools and skills needed, which need to be, of course, having sustainability in the core, but also concerned about profit and economy and return of investments, etc., so that they can go on and grow. And I also mentioned scalability, and there is a core belief in the power of networks and how scalability can only happen when you have a strong network of people thinking alike, and hopefully leaders and people in institutions that are supporting that. To your questions with Tech for Good, I think I think words have been inflated and overused for many years. So Tech for Good is and might be understood like maybe a branding, or sometimes a misuse for the sake of better profit. For me, it's how to develop technologies and innovations with coming from a need and a necessity to improve and enhance people's lives, the environment and the planet we live on, and to really support society with what they do. In the beginning, maybe I thought it should be biomedical and patients. Then I developed to think of the bigger picture, and the foundation really tackles it on different ways.
Yeah, but just a quick follow-up question. So this is also the kind of criteria you use in assessing startups for your Respond Accelerator program, right?
Yes, sure.
Because as mentioned in the chat, so there's a call for application out there at the moment for new for people who want to join the cohort 2021 for the Respond Accelerator. And the question would be, how do you assess the good in tech for good, or the societal impact when you're looking at startups, or what criteria are important in the selection process?
It's a very good and difficult question, because we also always iterate. And maybe, Lucas, you can tell later, you joined the Respond Accelerator program last year, about your experience and how, like, different founders, like, if you thought we did it well. But for us, it's important to have impact and sustainability as the core of business models of innovation, not as an add-on or a nice to have. It is so important to have a business model built around solving a very basic global challenge which we are facing. And of course, last year we had specific areas of interest. This year we defined future of work, sustainable urbanization, and responsible economy as 3 main focus areas. And within that, we search for cutting-edge technologies and innovative business models, which are scalable, which are competitive, and at the same time have sustainability and a strong team which has a good sense of responsibility for what they do. And these are like the criteria which need to be all combined to join the program.
Perfect. Thank you, Heba. Enrique,
Thank you.
what's your role in the Tech for Good scene? What are you doing?
Sure. Thank you, Johannes, and thank you for the invitation. I'm Enrique Zapata, the coordinator of the GovTech, Data Intelligence, and Open Government Agenda in GAF, the Development Bank of Latin America. And for over 2 years now, when we started the digital team at the bank, we decided to promote and really support the GovTech ecosystem in the region, under the premise that governments should not be doing everything by themselves, and that is through collaboration that we can really help to solve the complex problems that we all face. So in that sense, we've been developing quite a few products and services, including the first GovTech index of the world, the first regional GovTech report to really know the quantitative and qualitative side of things, and most importantly for this region, developing the first investment program for GovTechs in the region, Latin America plus Spain and Portugal, with quite a lot of success, and really surprised about what we've seen that these GovTechs are doing in practically every single one of the sustainable development goals. So that's that for me on this first part. And just to say what Tech for Good means for me, it means every single digital tool that can help us bring greater opportunity, greater agency, greater equality, and greater well-being for the greatest number of people.
Cool. Thank you very much. Can you say just a few words what I asked Heba, the core selection criteria for your programs? You mentioned GovTech, so they have to be in the Gov sector. Is there a kind of SDG focus that you're targeting, or is this
absolutely
a broad program?
Yeah, well, given the pandemic last year, we focused exclusively in GovTechs, helping governments to solve any economic, social, or health related problem. This year, we will be releasing the second round of the investment program, 2 million for GovTechs, which will increase kind of the scope of the work. And what we're really focusing in is in 3 things. First, GovTechs that can really show the societal impact that they've been creating, that really measure a benchmark and really know what their treatment, so to speak, brings to government and for the people once their technology is implemented. Second, GovTechs that can really bring a return on investment for the governments themselves, really understand if these GovTechs are actually bringing savings, if they're actually building economy from other side of things. And third, GovTechs that are past a good idea and are really in an implementation and scaling phase. So that's for us the 3 basic points that we're focusing to in the selection criteria.
Okay, great, thank you. And is GovTech a special field where you say, okay, technology is very important there, or where do you see the main sectors or topics where technologies are important in order to change the world for a better?
Yeah, I think that the really impressive thing about GovTech is that it's kind of an umbrella of all of the other sectors. You can be doing education in government, that's EdTech in government, so it's GovTech. You can doing finance and would be fintech, but if you do it in government, it is under the umbrella of GovTech. So really, you have a great scope of projects to work with. As I was saying, we just recently we're writing a blog about GovTechs focusing in each of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, and to our surprise, there are more than 5. There are more than 10 GovTechs in the region, exclusively Latin America, Spain, and Portugal, working in each and every single one of those 17 sectors. So it's about a mentality. It's about really understanding how startups work with government and detonating that ecosystem so that government can really be a rationalized thing and thus have a rationalized public policy to support people like Lucas and like Jesus.
Perfect, thank you. Jesus, you were nodding a lot with your head. Would you agree that GovTech is a special sector? Because as I understood you, it's also kind of umbrella term, right? So there's a lot in GovTech. There could be education, there could be other SDGs. Is GovTech really one of the core fields for you where you can create impact with technologies?
Yeah, I will say definitely. I'll give you an example. I did mechatronics engineering because I didn't know if I wanted mechanics or electronics or computing or everything. So I wanted everything in my studies, and I did mechatronics. So for now that I want to make an impact, I do GovTech because this is my best approach to have different access to make an impact. So I definitely agree with what Enrique is saying. For us, the opportunity to stitch together top technologies, emerging technologies with the SDGs, for example, getting stronger public institutions, that makes me feel, so that makes me feel that there is an opportunity to actually help decision makers to have a broader perspective, right? And if you help decision makers, then those decisions that impact multiple sectors from the government perspective, then you have a broader or a strategically approach to make an impact or to serve technology for good.
Perfect, thank you. Maybe a question to Lucas, because you're working on hardware instead of software. We're talking a lot about platforms and apps and so on and so forth. So what is more important, hardware or software? Which type of technology in order to create impact?
I would not put them into an order of priority. I think they serve different purposes and they have their own importance, for sure. Like there's a difference between these two worlds that is undeniable, is the factor of speed. In the digital world, everything gets faster and everything can be reached much faster. If you're creating such a solution that if you turn one button, then something happened, either people have to donate or people are benefit by it, like the impact is practically instantaneous, right? On the hard tech world, hardware, it's a little bit more complicated. So my industry is the prosthetics or orthopedics assistive devices more in general, that includes prosthetics, orthotics, wheelchairs, and all that sector. So that is a very traditional industry, and it's door-to-door sales are made. So people don't buy things out of the internet, and so they need to try it before they actually use or adopt certain technology. So the timeline is definitely different in terms of the impact that you create, but I would consider both of them as important.
Thank you. Maybe a kind of similar question to Heba. You've seen a lot of different startups in your selection process. If you would what's your feeling? In which sector or with which technology can you create the biggest impact? So in the question, which is the biggest lever to change the world? We're talking about tech innovations changing the world. Or what would you say are particular sectors, SDGs or technologies that are most important in this tech for good?
It's difficult to say the most important. Also with the party, like I'm a mechanical engineer. I was very supportive of mechanics, and then suddenly I also got into the software and simulations and AI area. I think it's very important to understand the basic needs and tackle them with the best way everyone can, with his capabilities and knowledge and experience and education. So like you mentioned, Janis, the SDGs are a great framework, and it's you have the goals and the sub goals, and they're really explaining what needs to be done to achieve those. And it's a wide scheme, from education to GovTech to healthcare solutions, to climate action and life underwater and sustainable cities and innovation. So it's very wide, and there are so many people working in these areas which should help us develop appropriate and solutions on the ground. So it's not about who is more important, it's about the intention of everyone working in a place, and who needs like to switch to put his purpose and attention to the right target. We always use this funny example with we need the fastest technology to be developed for sustainable cities or for decarbonization instead of being used for another Snapchat filter. I'm not saying that social media is not important, but I think if we decide to solve some issues, and this is something we learn in engineering or in technology, actually it's all about give me a problem and I will solve it. And we all know it's solvable. It's just about getting people involved, getting the investments in the right place, getting the attention and the support of policy and everyone in order to do the job as an entrepreneur properly, and not have good in the title of your business model as a disadvantage because you might not be so profit oriented. So I wouldn't prioritize. I think you can work in energy and in health and all of that. There's always good to do. And a final point maybe, which I think is very important, is the inter-technology and intersectorial interaction. I remember, like, I started with automotive and then was in medical technologies. And I know how much the knowledge of automotive at that time brought to advance medical device technologies and to accelerate production and AI in this area, etc. So we need to work intersectorial and out of these silos of this is climate tech. It's very important. Now everyone focuses on that and everyone leaves health and goes to climate tech or cities, etc. So we need to support everyone in whatever he can do in the place he is.
Perfect. Thank you. So more impact, less labeling. That's one of my conclusions out of your answer. I mean, we're in a big crisis, in a big health crisis, which is also a crisis in many other fields of our society. And maybe this question goes to Enrique. So what role do technologies play in this specific COVID-19 crisis? And are there particular programs that you have in order to maybe foster technologies that are tackling this crisis?
Sure, that's an excellent question, and it's a very deep one. The kind of the first level of the answer would be yes, of course, it's paramount, it's relevant. We're having this conversation right now because of the pandemic and because of everything that resulted from there. From the government side of things in Latin America and practically in all over the world, what we see is that the urgency for the digital agenda and for digital innovations was renewed. That urgency and that agenda has been in the works for decades now. And a lot of people, including myself, from anywhere in the world and from every single multilateral organization have been working on that. What changed right now is that the urgency is real, it's short term, and people can really feel it. And what that means is that politicians and policymakers have the right incentives to move forward with technologies. So the demand is current, it's real, and it's there for these kind of programs, in digital in the broader sense, and entrepreneurial and GovTech, so to speak, in this conversation. The downside of things is that governments need to do this while facing challenges that were already there. There is an incredibly big budgetary impact. Governments have to do more with less. We need a cultural change that is not yet there. And we need to contextualize technology, entrepreneurship, and innovation to the specificities of the governments that we work with at the national level, and more importantly, at the local level, where real impact can be made. So if you see what your report is saying, if you see and if you think about what we're trying to do with GovTech, is really bringing this financial side and economic side of things to the entrepreneurs. That's creating an economic sector, creating and promoting an economic sector with high productivity and high value added, which is kind of the perfect world for every single country in the world. While at the same time working with people like Lucas and Jesus that want not only to make money, to live their lives as they should, but to create impact for other people. This done through the technologies and specifically at the local level can be and is really creating impact in the region. The last idea that I would say around this is that in Latin America, given the type of governments that we have, the budgets that we have, it is at the local level in which we can really see change. And GovTech and technology ends up being a really cost-effective technology, done well and done and developed in the right way, are a really cost-effective way of tackling complex problems in the short term.
Thank you, Enrique. Just a quick remark. So if you have questions, please feel free to post them in the chat and we will pick them up. And but of course, there will be enough time to ask a question afterwards. So I promise that we will talk a little bit about the ecosystem as well. And maybe the first question goes to Jesus, and the question how he would assess the current ecosystem for tech innovations. And maybe if you look back when you started your business and when you look at the ecosystem in the current state, so what changed? And what is maybe missing within this ecosystem? So where has most of the support come from, and what is maybe missing for new tech for good entrepreneurs in your country, but maybe also in Latin America?
Yeah, I will definitely speak from a regional perspective. In the end, we're a Mexican Argentinian company, so we kind of mix both ends of Latin America. So perhaps one of the best things that has happened is to coin the term GovTech as a regional term. When we started working, perhaps it was back in 2012, and we used to call our efforts civic tech, and it was much more looked at it as an activist movement, as a civil society, non-profit kind of organization. And then when you move for profit, you start stepping into this gray area, right? And now that gray area makes a lot of sense. You say GovTech and you say, I'm doing social impact, I'm doing technology for good, and I'm actually doing profits as well. I'm purpose driven, but I'm having also profits. That makes a lot of sense for a lot of people. 5, 10 years ago, that wasn't there. So that has been a great chance for us to validate our thoughts, to feel like it has been worth it to keep on working for these years in the same area. And to switch the years from what was a grant seeking, looking to make an impact, to look more into a profitable or financially sustainable approach of making an impact. And at some point we had actually a happy problem. In the end, our target customer is a government. So we gave technology open source and for free to governments. And when we started to charge, they started to using it better and making bigger impact. So it was a really happy problem, and we found that when we felt that there was this opportunity, we started seeing the GovTech industry is connecting some kind of dots. Now we can say that it's a 400 billion industry and that it's growing, and that there is more and more interest from the VC world thinking about GovTech. Here, it's really hard for a startup to stitch or to cope with the purchasing cycles of a regular government. So you need to go for capital. But if you go for capital, a regular VC, a traditional investor, they ask you for monthly recurrent revenue. There is no government that pays you on a monthly basis. so how can you raise money if you have no traction, if you have no matrix like that? And you say, like, you know, this I have 2 years with my company and I have these 2 contracts, only 2 customers. Yeah, but take a look, it's a yearly based contract, and so it's a 2-year lifetime, right? It's not a day-to-day basis. So it's very, very different to speak on the fundraising spectrum, and on the customer acquisition world is very different from other industries. But I see more VCs, more funds, and more stakeholders in general getting together. For us, the pandemic became this threshold. So for us, the pandemic, it was a great moment because we saw the opportunity to connect to a lot of public servants using Zoom. That wasn't possible before pandemic. That wasn't possible before March last year. So we have less than 12 months where we can actually connect with a Zoom call with a public servant. And that has helped us to try to stitch together. Next, February 2nd, we have this meeting to create a regional agenda on GovTech. That wasn't there, and it's happening. And this is what makes me feel that the GovTech industry is growing. And this is where we think that the funds and the customers are going to be more contextually aware of what we can do using technology for good.
Enrique, you have a comment on that?
Yeah, no, I think that it's very important what Jesus was saying around the need for a sensibilization specifically for impact and venture capitalists about what GovTech is and what really social impact investment is, so as to avoid them generalizing and trying to find a Silicon Valley unicorn in social investment entrepreneurs, because they won't. Things were different. The supply and the demand side are different. So there's a great need for people to understand the specificities of the actors in the ecosystem and in the relationship, so that we can really start building that capital flow that Jesus was talking about, and that is paramount so that this can really move forward.
Maybe, Juanes, I can add something here from the report. Like the GovTech issue has been also mentioned, and there is, of course, the conversations about regulations and how to simplify regulations or have new regulations for startups. The procurement issue, which Jesus has mentioned, and about how public agencies should engage more with non-traditional vendors, startups, etc., and simplify them to support, like we've seen in the German government with the Wir versus Virus initiative, was also supported by a lot of responsible leaders, how to think out of the box and have new models where you bring in startups to solve urgent matters immediately. Another topic is also Daniel Kurski in the report also mentions that it is important that people from the public sector also are starting, or governments are starting to join startups, because you start mixing a little bit and see the necessity and importance to support these business models and solutions. So this is also a very important step. And of course, what Enrique was mentioning with the public funds and assigning public funds and funds specifically to those issues. I'm sure that a startup like Lucas's Amparo has different experience with B2G startups. I'm also very excited to always see how the business model built on B2G or B2B is having similar or completely different challenges, because this is you always think that if you are working with the government, it's a problem. I'm not sure, Lucas, what your experience is, but I think for startups it's also challenging to work with corporates, right? And I think I hear, I know. It's important to, yeah.
Thank you,
Quickly adding something. This concept of B2G, when we applied to accelerators or to mentorships, there was only B2C and B2B. B2G has less than 12 months, as you can see that appear, and that's also an indicator. That's validation.
And to be honest, we had it as a necessity when we were screening last year. We said we have to have some B2G startups because we think long-term impact will have to be done sometimes to P2G. Something, a startup like Bozak, who's offering water purification plants, etc., in Belgium and in Suriname, in Africa, etc. So they have, or Hawadawa, they have very complete B2D solutions and successful sustainable business models. And this is what we need to support more.
Definitely. But I think we should, later we should dig a little bit deeper in this question of funding and financing models and how funds and VCs, if their models fit to the tech for good reality. And you mentioned one or two of the shortfalls. But first, maybe to Lucas and the question regarding the ecosystem. So where did the most support come from in setting up your business? So when you look back in the history of Amparo, what was the most important part of the ecosystem for you as a company, and how did it change over the years?
Well, I have to agree with what Jesus said. Like like he said 10 years, but I would even go like 5 years ago. Like impact investing was very limited, right? So maybe a few VCs have already taken on it. But if you go now, if you look for different impact investing providers or different VCs, or even family offices or smaller investors that are interested in joining the game, they're also going like for impact. So, I mean, I think we cannot be naive. Like capitalism has kind of redressed itself in so many different ways. So right now, sustainability and impact is kind of trendy, is coming up, and I'm so happy for it because it also brings impact and brings value to the world. So actually right now we're not just doing things for doing, but we're actually getting results out of it. So, but I'm not, I would say I'm not naive in that sense, that I think that, and I'm happy that the capitalism movement, like system, and all the economic movement has been looking at this specific ecosystem in order to explore it, because this actually makes things more sustainable and impregnates even higher impact. So I think I can for sure say that when we started, so we founded the company back in 2016. And back then, the amount of impact investment possibilities were very short. Back then, I didn't have any accelerator that was talking about like more impact-driven startups. And for sure, not talking about B2G. This is also something extremely new in the ecosystem. But I see that there's a bigger movement of both investors, but also like governments and different actors of the ecosystem, like accelerator programs or even universities. They're fostering more and more ideas and solutions that would have a much bigger impact.
Thank you. And what's still missing? So would you see specific voids within the ecosystem? So would you say we need more accelerator programs, we need more funding, we need more non-financial support? What's still missing?
If you look at the, like, even though there are more impact investors, if you look at the proportion, impact investment is less than 10% of all investments in the world. So I would say there needs to be more equality to that. Or I would say even there has to be an inequality, but in the other way around, it would be much better that we have 90% of capital going to impact-driven organizations and 10% going to things that don't ever actually care, or they're not focused on that kind of thing. So I think there needs to be, like, the change of paradigm is happening, the change of mindset is happening, the focus is happening. I would say the speed is still yet to come, but it would be very, very helpful to have even more people actually going to there. But I would say impact investing is very risk averse nowadays, also because of the whole conception of profit is what brings returns, right? So, and if you look at an impact investing organization, they're not disconsidering profit, not at all. Everyone is making a profit, but they are not, like, the thing is that they're considering the impact that they make more than the profit that they could make. So they do, how can I say, they don't limit themselves by the amount of money they can make, but the amount of impact that they do, providing also money, which in a different mentality could bring even more money, but no impact. So I think there's a difference in how people perceive still impact investing, and they perceive impact organizations as kind of doubtful and like, does this really work? Is this really the thing? Maybe Jesus can share his experience, but this is how I've been perceiving. Don't get me wrong, it's getting much better, but I think there's still quite some work to be done from other areas and stakeholders from the system.
Of course.
Can I elaborate a little bit?
Yes, please.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Lucas. I deeply share what you're saying. And I want to share an experience that I had. I shared this World Economic Forum network of the YELs with a relevant VC firm here in Mexico. He's a very good friend, the president of this VC firm. And I was chatting to him and I said, like, I'm asking for advice. In my mind, I was like, ask for advice, get money twice. and I was like, I'm asking for advice. So this is us. We are a GovTech company. This is what you're doing. If you as a VC, what are you looking for? What do I need to do to be attractive to you? And he said, it's hard because you have not the typical traction. So this is a thing that it's needed to show that kind of traction and that impact. And also, if I think of you as a social impact company, modifying slight things in government take 10 years to show an impact. So I still don't know if I want to invest in that, because I want to see returns. I want to see the social impact. I want to see the money. So that's one thing that is missing. And the second one, and this is perhaps the one that is hitting us the most after 2020, one of our best customers in Mexico that stopped to renew the contract because of COVID, he said, like, Chuy, what do you feel that today we understand more than ever that we need to use your technologies to be more efficient and to have better resources? And because we actually help the governments to get more revenue, to sell better their licenses, which is their product, the way they make money. So he was telling me, how do you feel that now I realize the importance of having your technology, but politically it is incorrect for me to use budget for innovation during a sanitary emergency? I need to invest in health, not in innovation. And that hit me a lot. Because he was like, yes, it is a political thing as well, because working with governments implies their political careers. So it's how people perceive what the politician or what the decision maker at the government is doing on how they will act. And this is a citizen thing. This is not a government. This is not a BC. This is a thing about perception. So it's hard to explain to every citizen that actually putting technology is going to make government more efficient to better tackle the pandemic. It looks better if you invest in vaccines directly, or in communicational efforts. So that's actually what I see, that it's one of the cornerstones, one of the most important pieces that are missing today.
Perfect. So we have culture, traction, short-termism, and no investment in an innovation. Enrique, what should we add to the list of shortfalls?
I mean, I absolutely agree with what everyone has said. I think that what we need to do is to align incentives from the government, from the investors, from the startups, and from the users. So that's for a start. And I think, to add to the list, there's a great need for leadership. And I agree with Jesus, and actually Heba was talking about leadership at the start. I would love to see Angela Merkel, or I'd love to see Biden talking about impact investment. And I would love to see them changing the narrative of what impact investment is, from a purely economic and revenue-driven view of things to a narrative in which the dynamization of the impact investment ecosystem can really help governments achieve their own societal objectives, be it in any sense, and for all sectors, not only GovTech. So I think that's something that we greatly need. And to build that narrative and to convince those leaders, what we need is evidence that this is actually a good idea. And we all need to be investing in generating this evidence. Us from development banks and multilateral organizations, you from the funding and financial side of things, the own startups, we need to make this evidence available for these leaders so they can really understand what we're trying to say. If not, we will be continuing these conversations in 10 years. So yeah, I would say leadership is key.
Okay. I guess this resonates with what Heva is thinking.
Yeah, I really want to underline the leadership topic. And I think it's actually exactly what we're trying to do with such a report, or with the BMW Foundation's activities, of bringing the sectors and leaders together to highlight and demonstrate and discuss and create a new push for policy change. Like we see also as a resonance of the Tech for Good report and respond that Dorothée Aubert, State Minister for Digitalization, stand as an endorsement and a support on how this is important. And I think these are like the steps or the highlights of where we see maybe a very strong lever and impact reached. But then also, again, the implementation is and the scaling up to make it common sense and the new. I don't like the term of new normal. I just need the necessary normal to achieve it. And maybe to Jesus' point, it's I can't stop every meeting to write down the impact measurements and quantifying impact, because a lot of things we sense and know the urge of can only start being measured when you can talk in the same language and have a quantification for it. And I think also, like Lucas, correct me if I'm wrong, this is something we experience in the accelerator very often, like impact measurement and how to communicate your impact and how to give it a very measurable way in addition to your profit, so you can make a new case and make a new definition of success and profits as a business. That impact is a key measure, and there is a lot of things changing with the ESG, and you're the best person to talk about that, Juanes. Criteria and beyond ESG and all of these discussions. It is key. Like, we know that we need to be able to communicate results and proof case, and this is something we need to work on together in this ecosystem, maybe to prove the case. And finally, I really sense a lot of walls being built by adding like the tech for good and tech for bad, and we are the impact investors and you are the different investors, etc. And there were a lot of discussions about investors saying when you don't label it, you even have a better chance for competitiveness, because if it's a high tech, if it's if it's competitive, then it's competitive. That we will not talk about anything else because it matters. So I'm not sure how to solve this issue, because we need to raise awareness on one hand, on the other hand, we need to stop isolating the ecosystems from each other. It's an open discussion, and I think we should all try, but it is an important point.
That's the perfect segue to the Q&A part of the event. So if you have questions, either unmute yourself and ask your question or post it in the chat.
There is a question from Juan Rubio, Juanes. How can we contact you in order to share with you the social tech entrepreneurs we know, so we can all help to build this social ecosystem?
Yeah. So maybe you can share the website of our accelerator program. I think that's the best way to do it. Katarina?
It's already shared, yeah.
Yeah, it's already shared, but maybe you can share it again. Then
okay.
There you find all the necessary information, also regarding the call for applications for the 2021.
I am sharing right now.
Perfect. Thank you. Are there questions, remarks, comments on what we already discussed on the panel? No questions.
Any reflection, anything to share?
Just one at a time.
But I think we should, but then we continue a little bit, because I already said, I think it's worth talking a little bit about also the funding and financing mechanisms, and what we have to improve in order to kind of strengthen and scale all these huge, good tech for good innovations? You already mentioned it, Jesus. There's a lot of short-termism. You need a track record. So what do we have to do about it? Do we have to tackle it really with this long-term cultural change? Or do you see a new generation of investors maybe? Or do we need support from the government? Is the best way to set up a fund from the government, which is really tailor-made for those, for example, GovTech innovations. So how do we tackle this maybe funding gap that's out there for tech innovations?
Yeah, thanks, Johannes. So when I think of GovTech, I see it, as we have been describing, as a complex problem with multiple stakeholders, with multiple impact areas. So in the end, any solution that can be generated, it's going to be the result of the emergent behavior of all these stakeholders, right? It's not something that it's on the hand of the multilaterals such as CAF. It's not in the government that it's seen as the customer or as the demand in this market playing approach, or the startups that we are kind of the offering, right? I think it's a combination of what we can do. What I see, and this is something that we are actually moving forward along with CAF and also, for example, with Ethereum Foundation. What we do is finding, and also with UNICEF Innovation, so finding a government that it's sharing the vision to build this idea of the future of government, to think about digital identities and the potential behind blockchain, to think about document holders, to see the efficiency to sell their products, as I was saying, right? Imagine when you go to Amazon.com and you find a product and you buy something, and then Amazon puts you 3 or 4 products that are alike. So how can we live that similar experience in terms of simplicity to acquire these products in a government platform? So those visionaries, those people in government understanding the power of technology to reduce the struggle in the lives of the citizen to follow the government, a typical government procedure, all the bureaucracy that it implies, and the benefits that they have for having a cash flow in terms of revenue as well. So these kind of people help us to put technology there to show the potential of it. So these governments opening doors for making pilot projects, they're essential, because then they help you to go with other financial institutions such as CAF or UNICEF Innovation or Ethereum Foundation and see, like, can we boost this together? Like we can last year we created something that we're calling the GovTech funds. So what we do is that we partner with, for example, the Trust for the Americas. And we say, like, okay, Trust for the Americas is going to pay $30,000. OECD is going to serve $30,000 of technology. Who is willing to put $30,000 to use this technology? And now you have a little bit more, think about 33, and then we have a 100K fund to implement a project that can show an impact and that can serve to keep growing a company and contextualize public servants. So this role playing, what we all stitch together, is what it's needed. And in the end, it's not just about that. Then you need to create what we create with what we call the Foros GovTech, the GovTech forums, to put that public servants to show off what they have done, so that they can like spread the word from a person that actually understands and has a tangible feeling of this technology for good. So this strategy, it's a long customer journey, but I believe this is the best way to stitch together all these dots and make beyond traction or beyond finding a solution, to make at least progress on what is called GovTech.
Maybe kind of similar question to Lucas. I think you're in a financing round currently, and you're about to scale your business. What are the core challenges, or what has to change in order to make it easier to get funding for great projects like yours?
So I think there's a difference in the stage of the company as well. Because if we're talking about like someone that just started an idea, they're gonna have something different to show, and they're also gonna need different amount of capital. And also makes a difference whether you're doing like software or doing hardware. That takes like drastically different amounts of capital for you to make a concrete idea. Especially medical area, you have to go through like a licensing and to different kinds of certification processes. So anyway, I guess every industry has their own specifications. In our case, so right now, so for you to understand some of the challenges that maybe impact organizations face, I have talked to a few impact investors, and something that they would like to see in a way that kind of like they need to see is a certain amount of revenue guaranteed. Like they want to see that the company already made, like, for example, 1 million in revenue for the last year. So, and that is what I was talking about, the risk averseness. So they want to make sure that the company is in a certain level, certain stage, that the business model has been proven and they're already like either not in the red or almost on the edge. So some organizations, they go through that kind of a spectrum, and that could be challenging. That could be challenging for organizations that are not there yet. They're not there yet in terms of the speed that the market adopts their technology. They're there with the sort of technology that is being, I mean, it's being adopted and people use things, but then maybe not as the speed that investors would take or would like. So impact investment also, the normal investment world is they do an investment for what, 5 to 7 years. They're expecting to get a 5 to 10, like to 10x return, more or less. In the impact investment, it could be quite different, especially if you're talking about hardware. It could be like 7 to 10 years that you get a return. So some people are also a little bit holding back on that end. But I think the strategy that we try to do, or actually that we implement, and I would definitely like recommend other entrepreneurs in the same spectrum to pursue, it's kind of like, I think you have to really understand your market. You have to really understand in detail what that market means in terms of impact and in terms of returns. And if you can actually, because some markets is not that simple for you to, this amount of users, this amount of money, or there's so many different like details and layers in between. But if you do a good market research in terms of reading what is in the market and how is the strategy for you to get to that market, and you show the potential and maybe like the track record that you have for the customers that you have, the recurring customers that you have, and how the business is growing exponentially. So I think those are things that really support an investment case. And this is definitely what I'm doing right now. So I'm talking to people at the moment and presenting that to them. And happily, I'm getting a lot of good contacts. And I wish to get more. I will get more for sure. But I think this is a good strategy. And for any investment case, be transparent, be open as possible, because it's not because you're compromising part of your profit for the impact that you're creating that you should be ashamed of yourself, or like, I think you should not be apologetic, but actually show the numbers. So this is actually how much we want, this is how much we make, and this is how much we help.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Before coming to an end, I would love to bring in Carolina. You're also now a very important part of the ecosystem in Latin America. How do you see your role in like tackling all these challenges that we mentioned, from like short-termism to culture to bring evidence and communication to the field?
Thank you,
What do you
Johannes.
want to add?
Okay, no, thank you, Johannes. Actually, maybe before adding, okay, no, we have more questions. Oh, yes, we have a question from Bruno. How do you see the regulation of social business by government? So maybe this question could be addressed to Enrique.
Yeah, absolutely. The answer is yes. And we see at least 3 places in which this regulation should be made. One is the fiscal treatment of these kind of startups. They need to be treated differently as to how they pay taxes and how the fiscal treatment is being done. Second one, the procurement processes and methods the governments use to make contracts with these startups, they definitely need to change, because they're not made and they're not catered towards startups from very different perspectives and from many different dimensions, from the size to the legal capacities the startups need, to the time that procurement process typically has in Latin America. And the third one is to enable spaces for experimentation inside government. In other words, to enable sandboxes, both regulatory, technological, and fiscal also. So yeah, at least those three areas are paramount so that this can really get going.
Thank you, Enrique. We also have Artemis from Impact Hubs sharing the agenda from the Davos. So here's the link. So just to answer your question, I think that when I listen all to you, I think that is more relevant than ever, this network in Latin America, because our purpose is how we can connect these providers of social investment capital that are willing to take a risk, willing to invest with patient capital, and how they can support these entrepreneurs with patience, as Lucas, you mentioned before. These kind of entrepreneurs, they are not looking for any financial report. They are looking for changing the world to create impact, social and environmental impact. So I think this is the way that we can see how we can, the value of this network of connecting different actors and working together, because I think that's something that we need to improve in Latin America, is that we cannot continue working insulated. We need to work in more collaborative way. And it's how we are promoting these dialogues, it's how we are promoting this connection, improving the knowledge that we already have, not only in terms of what is investing for impact, but also what is happening in the world and how I can invest in the best, how I can deploy my financial and non-financial resources in the best way. So when I listen to you, I think, okay, we need this network in Latin America, and it's because we are convinced as a team to support this network, to continue promoting connections, knowledge. And I always mention a phrase from our founder that the reason of this network is we need to change the way of making philanthropy, of deploying these philanthropic grants. Is how we can deploy not only grants, but bring in other financial instruments to create social changes. So I just want to ratify our role, our mission, our purpose, to continue working in Latin America, to continue connecting different providers of capital, to continue working with you, with these entrepreneurs that are willing to create a change in the world. So thank you very much to all of you, to Juanes, Heva, Lucas, Jesus, Enrique, for being part of this webinar. It has been a privilege. We will share the recording link with all of you. And happy to continue receiving questions. So this network just want to continue being on live. So we are always welcome to receive your questions, your comments, your inputs, because it is how we want to work in Latin America. So thank you everyone to be here with us, and stay well and safe.
Also, thanks from my side, and thanks Carolina for making this happen, and to your great team.
No,
have a wonderful evening,
day and afternoon, evening
and afternoon. Exactly.
Okay. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Thank
bye
you
bye.
so much.
Very
Bye-bye.
happy to share. Thank you for the psychological support.